Well, good evening and welcome to the Big Bad Broadcast live on the Roku Network. We're on StrongIslandTV.com. We're on Roku. We're on Fire Stick. We're on our own personal website, www.thebbbbradio.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitch. We're everywhere. And we got an amazing show for you today, which I can't wait. But let me introduce you to the guys. We got Mike Grief.
Hey,
he's up
Merry
there.
Christmas. Even though it's not Christmas, but I'm doing Christmas for a whole month because I'm just a miserable bastard and
Santa's
I need to get
watching you.
Yeah, Santa is watching.
And we got Craig Mitchell.
Oh, hey, how you doing? I'm the small guy up here. Finally, I'm small.
Craig's our man around town.
Looks like
and let me
a
give you a little
flipper and not a
background.
hand.
Mike Grief, big character actor, a lot of TV shows. Craig, also character actor, TV shows.
Yeah.
They both do stand-up.
We
But
do.
we've got a guest today that I am so happy. He's done everything. He's a stand-up. He's an actor. He's a producer. He's done everything. And more important to me, he's a really good friend that I've known for many years. In fact, actually helped me on my first TV show that I ever did because he was the
What
guy.
was that, your show of shows?
Why is it two Mike Greaves? Why is it two Mike Greaves?
There's no two Mike Reeves.
Yes, there is. Now that you're in
On
the
my
corner
side.
also.
Oh,
I see me, you were big on the bottom, Mike, and then a little Mike up in the corner over him.
I don't know.
All right, let's just bring in Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Provenza.
Yeah, he's coming in. Don't worry. Here he is. And he's really small, but I'll make him bigger. Hold on. There he goes.
Hey.
Oh my God, the world was upside down.
Paul Provenza, how are you, buddy?
How the hell are you, John Ferrantino and company?
I got to tell you this story. Last time I
Before
saw
tell me
you.
that story, before you
What?
tell me the story, I heard that Mike was tight with my cousin Mike Greco.
Right. I was, yeah.
Really?
And you did stand up for how long?
Me for about 17 years.
But you had been doing stand up how long when you knew?
Oh,
my
we
cousin?
were both starting out. There was like this. I started in '87. This is probably '88 or '89 that we were doing this.
Well, he's gone on to be a bit rich, successful restaurateur here in Los Angeles. So how do you feel about?
That's awesome. And I have a cooking show. I have an amateur cooking show, so we should hook up.
There we go. You guys. Exactly. You know what? That's exactly what the world needs. Another podcast.
There you go.
You know the joke. My housemaid didn't come today because she was doing her podcast. I will say that we've been doing this since the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before there was 4,000. We were going to change our name to.
There were only
We were gonna change our name
3,998
to-
podcasts back then.
We were going to change our name to get more viewers to Joe Regain.
Podcast.
Actually, if you want to get a lot of views, man, we should
Joe
just name the
Regain
podcast
Podcast.
Puppies and Tits.
How does
Puppies
Joe
and
Rogan
tits.
not- how
Puppies
does
and
Joe
tits,
Rogan
man.
Not have a Rogaine sponsorship.
All right. So last time I saw you, before we get into how wonderful your career is and everything you've done in your life, last time I saw you, we were in Vegas, and you and I were supposed to go out, and you called me and said, "Listen, I can't go out because I'm going to Penn and Teller's house, and the fact that you do comedy magic, they're going to think you're a dick." So that was my last thought. So I go to New York, and I get hired by this TV show to do for Canada to do this time capsule thing, and I got to do a show where they do the Fantastics in this little off-Broadway theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I go there. There's no microphone or anything. There's like 80 people, and I walk out, and who's sitting 3 feet from me but Penn and Teller. And the entire time I'm doing my act, I have to look at them thinking, Paul thinks that they're going to think I'm a dick.
That's hilarious.
And it was really intimidating. But after the show was over, Teller came backstage and said, "Oh my God, I never saw that Barstool thing before in my life. It was so funny. It was so funny." And Penn came in and did one of these.
Well,
which I guess is a rave. But yeah, I mean, It's so funny. And I always think of that, how you go, oh, yeah, I'd love to have you come with me, but they'll think you're a dick.
Yeah, they'll think you're a dick.
I want to hear the pickle story. John told me that you used to call yourself the Pickle. I want to know what that's about.
I'll talk about that in a minute. I just got to finish the Penn and Teller thing. The funny thing is that I'm actually co-hosting a podcast with my friend Dan Pasternak, who has a oh shit. Oh, fuck him. Can't deal with it right now. So I'll just have.
I guess you don't need to extend your car warranty.
I'm going to have a package stolen. That's all. So on this podcast, it's called Obsessive Comedy Disorder. And we just dropped yesterday a two-parter with Penn Jillette talking about magic and comedy magic and how much he hated comedy magic.
Meanwhile, he's touring right now with one of my best friends, my student, Michael Carbonero. Michael was my student.
Was he on the show? Their Fool Us?
No, Michael took over their theater when they went to Australia from the Carbonero effect.
Yeah, actually Penn right now is location scouting in Vancouver for a movie of a show I saw a million years ago that some friends of ours had done, including Jim Turner from Duck's Breath Mystery Theater. Do you remember Randy the Rainbow? You remember Randy of the Redwoods?
Yeah.
MTV? That was Jim Turner a million years ago.
Wow.
And they did this show called Clown Town, and it's about this, like, you know, small little city or trailer park outside of a city that's populated by clowns. And it's like they have this. It was such a great stage show, and Penn's making a movie out of it.
Oh, cool,
nice.
But you know what? Enough about him. He doesn't need the press.
Yeah. So Paul helped me do my first TV show, and I don't know if you'll remember this. We had to do the opening of Comet.
Wasn't it Bill Boggs?
Yeah, Comedy Tonight.
Oh,
right.
But do you remember we had to do the cold opening, which was the newspaper trick? It was the newspaper trick. And the way it was supposed to go was I would be in the back, like a locker room, reading a newspaper. And I go, it's my first TV show. If I screw this up, it's going to be all over. My career is finished. And it's a variety. And I start ripping it up. And Paul comes in and goes, hey, is that Bill Boggs's Variety? Because if there is, there's no show. And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, you're the magician, do something. And I restore the paper. And on the front, it says, it's Comedy Tonight. And the show starts. Right. So we do it flawlessly, right? And the guy comes in and goes, I lost sound. He goes, can you do it again? So I'm on my hands and knees with rubber cement setting up the newspaper. Paul's just laughing at me like, I'm so glad I'm not a prop comic. And I go to do it again, and we do it again perfectly. And all of a sudden the guy goes, hey, we're a little out of focus. We need to do it one more time. So I'm down on my hands and knees again with the rubber cement. He's hysterical laughing. So they go, one last time. So all of a sudden I'm ripping it up, and Paul comes in and goes, just like this. Hey, is that Bill Boggs' newspaper? Like, so over the top. It's ridiculous. I can't even stop laughing. And I go, yeah, it is. And he goes, well, do something. Boom. And gives me like one of these, like, stomp your foot takes. Right. I restore the newspaper, and it's backward. It's backwards. Do you remember this, Paul? And inside the paper, it says, it's Comedy Tonight on the inside. And he looks over my shoulder and he points into the paper and goes, I've seen this trick. And we both start laughing so hard that was the take they used.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's hilarious. No. That was so long ago.
Oh, I know.
And Andy McDowell was on that show, right? We did didn't we do stuff with Andy McDowell too?
Wow.
Do you really want to talk about that?
Well, I mean,
come on, let's hear the dirt.
Okay, so what happened was we were sitting there, and you didn't have panel; you sat in the audience,
right?
And she was really hot at the time, and physically, she was beautiful. Bill Boggs says to her, "So, what does a sexy woman like you do on the weekend?" And she goes, "Well, Sometimes I just like to take my shoes off, take a walk on the beach with my dog Blue. And Paul races over and whispers in my ear. Do you remember?
Go ahead.
I used to think she was hot. Now I just want to jizz in her hair.
Oh my God.
And with that, we hear the guys in the booth behind us die laughing. And he goes, "Oh no, oh no." That wasn't the only time we got in trouble with a wireless mic in Southampton with Hiram Caston.
And then we turned it into a bit.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, it was. So for those that don't know, I was just telling these guys before we went on. So I was doing the sword trick and the piece broke off and I couldn't do the trick after the 5-minute buildup. And Raging Bull had just come to the movie theater. We had seen it. And Paul comes walking on stage and goes, "How big are your balls to be doing this trick? You spend less time eating and more time practicing. You could have done this trick." And I'm going, and so we start doing this whole thing. We walk off stage and we're hysterical. And he's going, "Hey, I saved the bit." And then Hiram's on stage going, "Let's hear what goes on backstage at a comedy club." And it gets a big laugh. And Paul leans into my mic and goes, "I can't believe it, man. I can't believe Hiram's here. I'm fucking his wife." And it gets this huge laugh. And then you follow up by going, "What did Hiram just say, man? It's the only laugh he's gotten in 2 days."
You can tell John's excited you're here, Paul.
Wow. It was so much fun, man.
Great.
And then that night, one other night, me and Max stood in the parking lot and told jokes from 11:30 at night until 7 in the morning.
Yeah, and that was because the stage was against a wall. It was like in a catering hall in the hotel, and the stage was against the wall behind which was that big catering industrial size kitchen, and you could go from the stage right back behind the wall to the kitchen, and they had a big huge weighing scale for like sides of beef and shit. And we put Max on the scale, and it was the first time he was actually able to weigh himself in years.
Outside the zoo.
Oh my God. I relate to that totally.
So
first
funny.
time you get weighed by not freaking trying to figure out how much water you displace.
Well, the funny thing was in the kitchen, they have all this big oversized equipment, like massive spoons and massive pots and things for, cooking for 800 people, whatever. And Max used to pretend he was eating dinner out of it in the middle of the show. Somehow holding a huge giant bowl with this massive spoon. Those were some fun times.
Paul and I were in the Improv one night when Max fell asleep on stage in the middle of his show. Paul goes, "He's asleep." I go, "No, he's not." He
How
goes,
do you fall asleep on stage?
His weight was it's such a problem that he had narcolepsy. He had what's called Pickwick syndrome.
I know exactly what that is.
Yeah. Okay. He had that. And one of the symptoms of all of that, or one of the collection of symptoms was, he wasn't getting enough oxygen to his brain because there was so much fat around everything inside him that he got narcolepsy. But blessing to him. Farewell, Max. No longer with us. Sorry.
Yeah.
Funny man.
We used to drive in the car on the strip and we'd stop at a light. We'd look over and go, "Max, wake up." He was driving.
Wow.
No. What were we nuts? Like being even in the car with him? Well, he rented the car, I guess.
You probably didn't know. I mean, my ex used to have
we knew.
And he actually fell asleep when he was driving, went to work, and he went under a truck and it crushed the front of his car. That's
Who's that?
Huh?
Who was that?
My ex.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he almost got killed. Then he finally went and got the test, and they put the CPAP.
Yeah, that might be something that might drive you to go get a fucking health test. Driving under a truck.
You wake up under a semi.
Yep. But Max had some funny bit. But we were talking about one of your bits before that is like probably one of the funniest things I've ever heard. The Bronx Zoo thing. That whole. I don't know if you remember your own bits, but
like one of the first bits I ever did.
You did it on the Tonight Show.
I did it on the Tonight But I wrote that bit like in high school, and I started doing comedy not long after high school while I was in college, but it was a really, really old bit. And I remember one time Billy Crystal came into Improv or Catch or something to work out a Tonight Show set, and he was doing a really, really similar thing. And yeah, look, at the time, it's kind of a hacky bit now, when I look back on it and I go, it was really, it's nothing.
But back then it was totally original. I mean, today it's
it was
like,
silly.
let me just introduce one thing here. When you did that on the Tonight Show, I was telling these guys, you were the first comic that we knew that did the Tonight Show. And we had a TV in the kitchen at the East Side, and we all watched it. It was really cool. Richie was like so proud. Oh, look, it's our friend Paul. He's on the Tonight Show.
Yeah, that's so nice. So those days were a little bit different, weren't they? But so I saw Billy Crystal doing a really similar bit, and he was getting ready to do a Tonight Show. This is before I did the Tonight Show, and I went up to him afterwards, really sheepish. It was Billy Crystal. He was already pretty well known, and I said, listen, I feel really awkward about this because you did that bit, and I go, and it's. I do almost the same thing. I've been doing it like since the beginning. He goes, when did you start doing it? And I tell him probably around what's he goes, well, I've been doing it since blah blah blah, right? And I was like, oh,
it's a knife fight between comics.
Well, no, it wasn't even a fight because he was Billy Crystal. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to lose this bit now.
Right.
And you know what? He never did it on the Tonight Show and never did it again. And my respect for him went through the roof. I couldn't believe it because I was nobody. I was a pisher. Nobody. And he had enough respect to not do it on the Tonight Show because I talked to him about it.
Well, you know what I found too? It's like that might have been a bit that and that he didn't write himself, that somebody suggested and whatever. And maybe he realized, you know what? That's where they got the idea. They got the idea from this guy. And
I think he actually figured at one point that, you know what, this isn't that great a bit.
That could be too.
It was a great bit.
The other person that happened with me, and I want to say this because they both deserve tremendous credit, but another person that happened with was David Brenner. And David Brenner, when I went to talk to David Brenner about it, he just, before I even finished the statement, he said, don't worry about it. It's out. And he never did it again. And I was blown away. And that was a great lesson for a young comic that, like, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. You
guys are so lucky to have had those contemporaries.
I know, right?
God, to be in the clubs with David Brenner and Billy. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, I didn't start until, I started in about 88, 89, but I didn't start working with, bigger acts until a couple of years later. But you guys, man, you were mixed up right in that when that boom was just really incredible. You got to see some incredible times.
Yeah, I mean, the boom was a weird phenomenon. There's actually a new boom going on now, but the first boom, the boom that you're talking about back in the 80s, that was like a business boom. That was like all of a sudden hundreds and hundreds of comedy clubs opened up everywhere, and there was, and cable was just starting. So the first original programming that so many cable channels did was stand-up because it was so cheap and easy to do. So all of a sudden, it was just this huge explosion, but it was more like about the business of comedy. Now there's another boom, but it's a creative boom. Unbelievable stuff is going on in comedy. And the internet has made it possible for people that don't have access to get into it, And it's just amazing creatively. And in terms of all the different voices you get now, it's a huge, huge boom again. But more of a creative, artistic boom than the first time around, which was mostly just like, wow, there's a business here,
Oh yeah, I remember we used to wait on lines to get into a comedy club, and it didn't even have to be the most famous comic. It'd be whatever, and you'd wait around the corner to get into the club because comedy itself was the draw.
I used to say to Richie, I remember when we first started doing comedy, we'd pull into the East Side Comedy Club. The line would be around the block, and it'd be like, oh, I can't wait to get on stage. And 5 years later, you pull in, the line would be around the block, and you go, look at these losers with nothing to do.
I mean, we were talking about TikTok before the show, and there's a lot of content on TikTok. Now, some of it is crap, but there's a lot of really innovative,
really funny stuff.
Yeah. There's some.
Unfortunately, though, there's a lot of comics, a lot of people mouthing to other people's work. They're like lip syncing, like we're Led Zeppelin now.
Well, like that woman who opened the show, the thing on this, Welcome to Heaven. That kind of stuff is brilliant. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very funny.
People doing some amazing shit, and they don't have to answer to anybody. They just follow in their hearts. They do shit, and all of a sudden they have a following. But it is amazing now that like I'll be driving, down a street in LA. I pass like the Wiltern Theater, and there'd be like a comic headlining, selling out the Wiltern Theater that I never heard of. I know the person is at all. They may as well be like some Latin band leader I never heard of that sells out a place.
That's like yesterday I saw this comic on TikTok, and the worst part about it was apparently he has his own special, and at the end you can't get the name of the special. He goes by so fast. And you don't even get the guy's name.
It was Dane Cook. No, I'm kidding.
No, he was really funny, man. He did a thing about, he goes, how did we get to this place in society? He goes, Woodstock had 400,000 people. And now a lot of them are conservatives watching Fox News.
I did see that guy.
And he goes, I figured it out, though. He goes, all the cool people either died of drugs or AIDS and what's left are the hall monitors.
Yeah. That was a good joke. I saw that guy too.
It was very funny, but I couldn't get his name or anything,
Well, I want to know what happened to that show. You this is another argument. John says I'm wrong. You were on that show I'm Dying Up Here, right?
Yeah, I did a couple episodes of that, yeah.
And I loved it. It was all about the boom in the 70s, the whole comedy story.
Well, it was the time period right before the comedy boom.
Yeah.
And it was that's a book by what's his name? I forget who wrote the book, but the book is called I'm Dying Up Here, and it's that's basically the gist of it, except that the TV show actually had nothing to do with the book. It just took place at the same time period.
Right.
Actually nothing to do with the book. The book is very different. It's pretty good. But what I do like, what I did like about that show, first of all, the cast was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Andrew Santino was so great.
He was awesome on
that.
Yeah. Everybody in the show was fantastic.
Eric Griffin.
It was a really, Eric Griffin. The cast was great. I thought they were doing a phenomenal job. And I came in just for a couple of episodes to play a character that may or may not have come back or whatever. But
Melissa Leo too. She played like the
my buddy Rick Overton was on the show.
Yeah,
Rick Overton was on it. I mean, I can't even get my head around all the. John Manfrotati was on it. A bunch of
who used to book.
But this is what I want to say. This is what I want to show some love to those people, because they went out of their way to cast dramatic parts with comedians that they remembered from the boom, and they called me to do the show. They reached out to me to come and say, hey, we got a part you might think we think you might be right for, and I thought that was just really super cool. I thought that was really like they were really making an effort to include the people that were there,
showing some respect for the real deals.
Yeah.
Paul,
Brad Garrett was phenomenal in that show.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal.
I thought he was going to get an Emmy nomination for sure. I really did, because he played like this Jerry Lewis type of comic. He was great.
Yeah, more like a younger guy who's like he made it big, and he ends up investing in the club and all of that stuff.
Do you remember my ex roommate? He said to mention that. Do you know Joey Gaynor?
Oh yeah, Joey Gaynor.
Right. Because he was at the Comedy Store. He was when we would watch that show, because we were roommates. He would just like, no, it didn't happen that way. This happened. And that. He'd be screaming at the TV. I'm like, dude, it's a TV show.
Yeah, that was a little frustrating, but it's fictionalized like crazy. Although some of the storylines were legitimate. Like there's still a question as to how the Improv burned down.
Wow.
So, Paul, I was thinking about you the other day. Caroline's is closing.
I know. That broke my heart.
Is
That's not the first place we worked together. We worked together on Long Island somewhere, right?
Yeah, but I got Caroline's because of you and Max at that cocktail party.
Right. And I started working Caroline's when it was on 8th Avenue.
Yes, that's what I did. After that weekend, Caroline called and said, "I want you to headline at 8th Avenue." I was like, "What?"
That's great. Yeah. No, I loved that place. That was a hell of a play. That was the first like classy comedy club that I ever played.
Were you a regular in all those city clubs like Catch a Rising Star, the Comic Strip? You know,
yeah. I didn't work so much at the Comic Strip, but mostly just because I didn't. I don't know. Just, you end up gravitating towards one or the other. And my home club was the Improv. But the Improv used to, it wasn't like it was out here with the Improv and the Comedy Store, where it was like, if you work one, you can't work the other.
Right.
It was quite the opposite. We'd be hanging out at the Improv, and the newer guys, we didn't get on until late, and so we were always hanging around. And Catch would call and say, "Hey, we had a fallout. Can you send anybody over?" And
that's so cool.
Hang up and go, "Hey, you want to go up to Catch? They got a spot in 15 minutes. Can you make it?" It was a whole different world.
That is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Lucian.
So we work all of those clubs, and then there were a bunch of little ones in the city, like a handful of one-nighters and things like.
I used to love the Cellar, the Comedy Cellar, and
Danger Field's closed,
Boston, and
yeah, but even before that, there were clubs like. Excuse me, I got a little touch.
You might need another cigarette. Did you bring enough cigarettes for all of us, Paul?
This is sadly my sinuses.
Oh,
but there were places that used to be like cabarets in the Village, and there was like a gay piano bar that started doing
Cafe Wa.
Hotel Mama.
Village Gate, didn't they?
Cafe Wa.
Village Gate used to do comedy. The Triple Inn. And all of these weird little places that
I remember the Eagle Tavern. There was like
all
these
weird
Eagle
Tavern.
Yeah, really strange places, but they were cool. That was the great thing about New York, is that if you went to enough places, you pretty much got every different kind of audience you could get.
Holy shit, Mike! That was the first place I saw you, at the Eagle Tavern.
Probably, yeah.
I did.
I used to go from place to place to place, and just to do that. Just to get used to being in front of people, whether the material sucked or not, I just had to get used to being in front of an audience.
It's like driving a car. The more you do it, the better you get at it without even trying.
Yeah.
So
those were incredible days.
I think I lost Caroline in the divorce.
Oh, did you? Did you hang out with Neil after that?
Yeah, I became really good friends with Neil, and I used to go everywhere with Neil.
Really good business decision, John.
Who don't know what we're talking about. Neil Hirsch is Caroline's ex-husband. He put on, but Neil Hirsch was a crazy
Arthur. He was Arthur.
He was Arthur. He was worth gajillions. He did something in the financial sector with communicating real-time prices of something, whatever, and sold his company and made gajillions. Wow. He was actually
and then sold that company, because I'm still friends with it. Sold that company and told me that the sale of that company made it look like the sale of a hot dog stand.
Wait, and you can't get us a sponsor? You're still friends with this guy, and we don't have a sponsor, John?
I went to a fight with him with Don King on his private jet. And we were really when I first met him, I was with Paul. He comes flying up in his Mercedes stretch, but the sunroof closed on his crotch, and he goes, "Neil Hirsch, half man, half Mercedes."
There's Arthur. You're right.
And then he'd give everybody silver bullets. Remember, he had a bodyguard, and he go, "Give me one of those bullets." And he give these people silver bullets, and he goes, "You don't remember me, but someday you're gonna find this in your dresser," and you'll go, "Who was that man that gave me the silver bullet?" He was really funny.
He was hilarious. I remember we went out to I guess it was the Hamptons. They had a big, huge like summer home.
Oh yeah.
In the Hamptons.
That's where we went to the party.
And me and you and Max and George Wallace all went out there, and Neil somehow convinced George Wallace. He said, "A lot of other people are coming." He goes, "I need you to go out front." He convinced George Wallace to go out front and hold a lantern like a lawn jockey.
Oh, that's fucked up.
And he used to carry a picture of him in his wallet. And he used to tell everyone that it was his son.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
He goes, "You want to see a picture of my kid?" And it'd be like George Wallace.
Jesus.
I remember that because George Wallace had on like turquoise shorts and a white and turquoise striped top. He looked like a jockey.
Hilarious. He
was so crazy.
Really, really funny guy.
What's his
Really
name from MASH? He used to live next. Alan Alda used to live next door to him, and he one night he had a canoe, and he goes, "Oh, Alan's really mad at me." He goes, "I rode down at night in the canoe, and I put a for sale sign on his house." We were there on Memorial Day or Labor Day weekend, and Caroline goes, "Neil will be back in a little while. He went shopping." Now, this is Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend in the Hamptons, and like a semi-truck pulled up with like a Boston Whaler, bikes, the cable guys installing cable on the holiday weekend in the Hamptons.
Wow.
He's got a beautiful house. I went to see him in West Palm Beach. He goes, "Yeah, I have like 20 acres at the Palm Beach Polo Club."
Yeah, me too.
He's got two polo fields behind his house, and he's got 19 polo ponies, 3 people that work the stables.
Peloponnese.
And
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's just, and he plays polo. He's very competitive now, and he doesn't drink anymore. And he's just not.
I thought he passed on.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh,
He did, but nobody told him.
Yeah, being sober is kind of the same thing.
I heard that it finally took its toll.
Really?
Yeah.
When's the
Are
last
you
time you
sure?
talked to him, John?
Neil Hirsch.
Like a year and a half ago?
Call his number if he
Oh,
answers.
there you go. I mean,
See if he answers.
call him right now. Get him on the.
You know what I wanted to ask you?
He died a year ago, June.
Wow.
Yeah, a year and a half ago, I talked to him. Oh my God. When I went to his house, there was this huge thing like the size of my neighborhood. And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I decided I need a lake. I want to go fishing."
A lake.
Jeez, it reminds me of the grief estate, which
He was
consists
Arthur.
of a
He was
shack I
totally-
built in the backyard.
Oh my
He was
God, I can't
totally
believe he
Arthur.
died.
Arthur is the perfect.
And then he was dating Bianca Jagger.
Maybe
What?
That's right.
maybe the role of Arthur was based on him.
He looked like he was dating Bianca Jagger because there's a big story in the paper that he was flying her out to the Hampton house in his seaplane, and it flipped over in front of the house.
Yeah.
And she looked exactly like Caroline.
Wow.
There's a lot of similarities.
It was pretty
Caroline's
weird.
producing movies. She's got a documentary out right now. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Conspiracy. Is that? I forget. But some issue-oriented thing that she's really into. So she's doing other stuff already.
So speaking of producers, you produced The Aristocrats. You were right?
Yeah, produced and directed it. Co-produced it with Penn and directed it.
Wow.
Okay, so I have a question about that movie, other than the fact that why wasn't I in it? But
Well, put yourself on the list of people who are in it and tell me where you.
Hey, the best one on there was I love Wendy Liebman.
Friendship.
Friend. She did a great role.
Yeah.
No,
Great.
but do you know that movie missed the total perfect ending, which you got to know about.
What are you talking
When
about?
Dangerfield was on the Tonight Show,
Yeah.
one of the last shows, and Johnny said to Dangerfield, "What's new?" And he goes, "I ran into the Aristocrats recently."
Oh no shit! I gotta find that clip.
He goes, "I ran into the Aristocrats recently," and Johnny just cracks up laughing. And he says, "Oh, what happened?" He goes, "Yeah, I ran into their agent." And he said, "Look, I know it's taken me a long time, but like 30 years, but I finally got you a job." And you know what they said? And Johnny's like, "What?" He goes, "I'm sorry, we can't do it. Father has quit show business."
Yeah, where
That would have been the perfect ending to the show, you know?
Well, it's funny because we tried to get Dangerfield, but he wasn't. I forget what it was. I think he wasn't feeling well or something. There's a couple of people that we really wanted to get in it. I'm putting my power cord in. We really wanted to get in it. Like I really, really wanted Buddy Hackett because Buddy Hackett.
Yeah, he was like the originator, right?
wasn't the originator, but here's the story of why Buddy Hackett meant so much to me to try and get him. And we almost got him. In fact, Penn spent a couple of hours on the phone with him, and he did it over the phone with Penn. Jay Moore hooked us up because Jay Moore and Buddy Hackett were really tight.
Yeah.
And but he said he didn't want to do it on camera because he was sick at the time. It was not long before he died, and he was sick, and he just didn't feel like being on camera. So we didn't get him. But the reason that I really wanted him was because I remember watching The Tonight Show when I was a kid, and they cut away for commercial. And, you know, normally when they cut away for commercial, the band plays a number for the studio audience. But this time when they came back from commercial, they came up on the set, and Johnny was losing his shit, laughing so hard, and the audience was going crazy, and Buddy was just sort of sitting there basking, and you know, I just did that, and it was just a huge laugh, and I never knew what it was. So the first time I did The Tonight Show, I asked the stagehand, as you're going out, when you're getting ready to go on, they put you in front of the split in the curtain, so they pull open the curtain and you walk to the spot, and they got a guy there to pull open the curtain. And he had been there for like 30 years. I mean, he'd been there like forever. And I said to him, and he was a really nice guy, and he was like, you know, he knew it was my first time and all. He goes, "You're gonna do good. You're gonna do great. Don't you worry about a thing. You're gonna do just fine. Johnny loves young comedians, and the audience is primed. You're gonna do great." Like a really sweet guy, you know. And so I got comfortable with him as I'm waiting to go on, and I said, "Listen, I got to ask you a question. Buddy Hackett was on the show once, and they cut away to commercial. I told him the story, and he come back in the audience goes, he said, "Yeah, Buddy told the Aristocrats joke during the commercial break." And I was like, oh my God. And so all these years later, because that was 1983 was my first Tonight Show. So, you know, we didn't start doing the Aristocrats until like, you know, 2000 something. And all those years later, I remembered I want to hear the story from Buddy. And so that's why he meant a lot to me. So it actually it turns out that joke actually goes all the way back to a part I didn't even remember.
Yeah, because from what I heard, what Johnny said to him, the setup was, "So what do you want to talk about when they come back?" And he goes, "I'm going to tell the Aristocrats story." And Johnny was like, "What's that?" And he told the story.
Imagine trying to tell that in the Tonight Show.
Johnny bought it like it was going to be like a real story.
There are more than a couple of instances where Johnny says the Aristocrats joke is like one of his favorites, and we ended up dedicating the movie to him because of that, and because we almost got him in it. And when we debuted, the morning after we debuted at Sundance with the movie, Johnny died, and so we went back in and added a dedication to him. But we almost got him in it. He was so close to doing it, but again, he wasn't very well, so he didn't.
Rodney made so many references to that joke, like all his spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, hey,
a lot of comedians like there's a clip that I just heard recently. Actually, I had never heard it before, and somebody sent it to me. It's a clip of Norm Macdonald, and he's on some radio show or something, and they ask him how come he wasn't in the Aristocrats, and he's talking about how like I never heard that joke. I don't know what they're talking about, and the whole thing is weird, and I don't know where that's coming from, wherever. And there's a lot of people. For a long time, there was a big like conspiracy theory, for lack of a better word, going on around it, that the whole thing was a setup, that there wasn't such a joke, and the whole thing was that we did. You know, Penn's response to that was just like, "I wish we were that smart." It's a real thing, you know. But a lot of young comedians are like, I never heard. I don't know what that is. Nobody goes around, "Hey guys, can I ever listen to this joke?" That I did, and it's really true. It's like people don't even tell jokes anymore. I mean, like you and me and Max, so many nights of my life spent just telling hilarious old jokes and stuff. But
like when you stand around with three people telling jokes. They tell a joke, and then it jogs something in your memory of a joke you haven't even thought of in 10 years.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, but that seems to not happen anymore. It seems like that whole, all those jokes, like, I don't know, maybe that's part of, the sea change in forms of comedy, whatever. But for some reason, younger comedians, they don't appreciate jokes. I don't know why.
No, it's more become
jokes.
stories and things and whatever. I guess stuff that's more relatable to everyday, which I think most comics do anyway. I mean, if you're not doing jokes, we
never did the aristocrats joke on stage. It had nothing to do with what you did on stage.
No, but we'd always see a friend and
tell
go,
each
"Hey,
other
did you hear
jokes
that?"
behind backstage and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go. What's your favorite joke besides the aristocrats?
I don't have a favorite joke.
No, I love it. I heard this from, I think it was a John
Well, I do
Fox.
I do love the big orange head joke. That's one of my favorites, which actually on the DVD extras of the Aristocrats. Remember DVDs?
Yeah.
A segment where comics tell some other of their favorite jokes, and Amazing Jonathan told the orange head joke. You know that one, right?
No,
I don't think so.
The guy walks into his old neighborhood bar or whatever, and he's got this big giant orange for a head. Everybody's like, "What the fuck happened? You have a big orange head? What the hell?" And the guy says, "Well, I went to a beach vacation," and he goes, "and I was walking along and I found this lamp, and I rubbed it, and a genie came out, and he said, you can have 3 wishes, and I asked for millions and millions of dollars. That's how that's why I have the limo driving in here, why I'm buying everybody drinks and everything. I asked for the most beautiful woman in the world to be my wife. That's why my wife, and she's fine." He goes, and here's where I think I went horribly wrong. I asked for a big giant orange as a head. That joke fucking kills me.
Yeah, there are jokes that only comedians laugh at. My favorite joke was so the setup was Richie and I were on a cruise ship, and this little weird guy stands up in the officer's mess and goes, "Excuse me, everyone. I got a joke to tell." And we were like, "Oh, this is not going to go well."
Yeah.
So he talks about so there's remember. So this animal's walking through the jungle, right? And he walks up to this giraffe and he goes, "Holy shit, man, you're the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. What's with that neck?" And he goes, "Neck? I'm a giraffe. I have spots. I got horns. I'm the tallest thing in the jungle." And he goes, "Oh, okay." He walks along a little bit further and sees a hippopotamus. He goes, "Holy shit, you are uglier than the last thing I've ever seen. Got that big wide nose, those funny little teeth, and those little teeny ears." He goes, "I am the hippopotamus. I am the fastest animal in the jungle." He goes, "Great." Walks along, sees a frog on a lily pad. He goes, "Oh my God, you are uglier than the last 2 things." The frog goes, "Hey, fuck you. I've been sick."
The first joke I remember as a kid was actually brilliant. When you think about it now, it's a fucking great joke. It was a dirty joke for kids, and it was, "Why do mice have such small balls?"
Why?
Because very few of them know how to dance. It's my favorite joke from being a kid.
I still remember my favorite joke. I heard John Fox used to use it in his act, but he told it to me before. There's that 2 firemen are butt fucking in a smoke-filled room. The sergeant walks in. He goes, "What the hell's going on here?" The guy goes, "This guy's got smoke inhalation." He goes, "Why don't you give him mouth to mouth?" He goes, "I did. How do you think this shit started?"
Oh, God.
Oh, man.
John Fox.
You know what I want to ask you, Paul? I want to ask you about one of my favorite shows, and I don't know why it's not on the air anymore, The Green Room. I love that show.
Oh, thanks.
Can you tell us about that?
That was a bummer that didn't get renewed.
Really, so awesome.
Still on demand on Showtime, right?
Yeah, it's still on demand,
So
and
awesome.
It's uploaded illegally everywhere.
Yeah.
And I watch free shit online all the time. I watch I don't pay for anything. I will find some place where it's pirated because I've never gotten paid a penny for all my shit that's on the internet. So I feel like
there you go. They stole from me. I'm stealing from them.
That the green room and Rough Crowd were the two of my favorite shows. It was all comedian centric, and
that was Colin, right? Colin Quinn, right?
Yeah,
the difference. There was a very clear difference that between Tough Crowd and the green room, which was Tough Crowd was about conflict, and I didn't want the green room to be about conflict. I wanted the green room to be like this, like a love fest, because when comedians get together, it's just the love of the art form, the love of making each other laugh, the love of laughing with somebody else.
That's I used to love. We used to go to the Green Kitchen.
We always maintained that you could have real substantive conversations that don't necessarily have to, be conflict. And so there were some substantive conversations on that show too. But I know that, no matter how heated it gets, somebody's going to be funny and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so that was the big difference between that and Tough Crowd. Tough Crowd was about getting people, each other's balls and shit. And so Green Room, I specifically, wanted to go the other way. It was a very different thing like that. But I loved doing that show. And that show, I started doing it live at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and very late at night. And the whole idea was just the comedians have finished their shows. They're going to come and hang out in this green room. And while I was doing, because Edinburgh Fringe is amazing. You could do, 28 shows in a row of something. So I also developed another show there called Setlist, which we sold to British television, did like 14 episodes for British television, but for some reason haven't been able to sell it here. But
I know Overton does that, doesn't he?
What's that?
Rick Overton does that, doesn't he? Is he on that with you?
Overton did a whole special of just him doing Setlist, which is all improv stuff. We create a set list for the comic. They see it on stage with the audience for the first time.
I've seen it on stage with Overton. It's amazing.
But so anyway, so the thing was, the Edinburgh Fringe, you could develop something over 28 days in a row, practically. I think there's one day off in between. And, that's like 2 years of developing something in another context. And, you can respond, right? You try something one night and you can respond to it and, see what happens the next night, tweak it, change it. And so when I was doing the green room there, I called this friend of mine, Pasquale, to come up from London. He was working at the BBC as a cameraman and like a tech guy. And he came up and he brought a couple of people with him and brought some cameras. And every night for like, a week or a week and a half or so, we would put cameras in different places. And so by the end of experimenting with that, I knew how to shoot this show in a way that was going to be different and unique and really address this thing. I always used to get frustrated with stand-up on TV because I always felt like TV took away the most beautiful thing of stand-up, which is the idea that anything can happen.
Right.
And there's moments, of this is a moment, this is a real life moment, But with TV, it was always like, you have to stand here, the camera's going to 2-shot there or 1-shot there, you can't do this, you can't do that. So when we shot the show, I specifically asked to hire camera guys who had done news and sports so that they could follow the metaphorical ball of the joke, wherever it came from, wherever it went to, whatever happened, I really wanted this dynamic camera work so that you got a feeling of, whoa, shit, this is exciting. Something's going on here, and I wanted the audience to feel as much like possible, like they were in the room rather than being, an observer with all a lot of thought went into that stupid little show.
I love that show.
A lot of work, a lot of really interesting people working on it, real creative people. This set design was this guy. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I can't off the top of my head remember his name right now. But he was, at first they were like, here's all these set designers, and they'd come in and they'd pitch ideas or whatever, and they all look like, talk shows. And found this one guy whose name escapes me. I'm sorry. I'll look it up. I'll have it by the end of the show. And he did some interesting things still within that sort of conventional notion of a set. And then, and I found out that he was actually also a fine artist, that he did a lot of real art, that's in galleries and museums and stuff. And he was really brilliant. And I said to him, treat this more like an art piece than a TV show set. Wow. And he came in with this fucking idea that was beautiful. And so it turned out to be like this art piece that we were, performing in the middle of. It was really cool. I mean, we really went out of our way to make it something very different and unique. And so I'm glad you liked it. A lot of people did. A lot of people like
it absolutely needs a reboot, and John wants to know why he's not in it.
He will be on the John, why don't you own a network? God damn.
They so you have to tell them the story about the pickle.
Yes, I want to know the pickle.
The pickle story. And by the way, Jerry Seinfeld came to see me do this set once, and he said to me, the first thing he said, I said, "Hey, how are you, man?" And he said, "I'll give you $1 million for that joke right now." Of course, now he could. At the time, it was a joke, but now it would be like, no, I want 5. The joke was born of necessity, and it was one of these weird things that just popped into my head while I was in the shower. Full blown, it popped into my head, and I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to try this," and it just worked like gangbusters. But I was opening for Diana Ross, and I had opened for her for a while at that point. Ultimately, I did shows with her off and on over the course of like 4 years or so. And we do everything from Westbury Music Fair to Caesar's Palace to a sit down at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City for 2 weeks.
Radio City.
Corporate gigs and stuff, where and she really ended up liking me and liking working with me. In fact, one of the first things that happened was one of the first gigs I did with her was a 2-week sit down in Vegas, and she was doing 2 shows a night for 6 or 7 nights a week. And after the first couple of nights, she kept asking me every night. She would ask me to add another 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to my set. So I was originally contracted to do 15 minutes. By the end of my 4 or so years off and on with her, I was doing a half hour, 35 minutes. Because what happened was it's such a strain on her voice to do 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week, whatever, 6 nights a week for 2 weeks straight, that she would drop songs. And she would ask me, "Can I fill the time?" Because she needs to cut a song out because her throat is getting it. And it sucks. In Vegas, a lot of singers have problems because of the Vegas air. There's all sorts of weird shit in the air in Vegas that, is normal and stuff. And there's always oxygen off the stage for singers to come. They come off stage to hit oxygen because it's fucking weird. So it's hard on singers. So she ended up loving me because I could do as much time as she ever needed me to do. But anyway, so I was touring with her and opening for her for a long time. And I had no billing. And every time my agents would ask her for billing, she would say, no billing, but I'll give you another X number of dollars. And so the money kept going up too, but I still wasn't getting billing. And it was a frustrating thing. And
excuse me one second. It was really weird too, because the show would start off and there'd be like a 20-minute medley of her greatest hits.
Well, and then that's part of the story. Let me get to that. So 2 things happened. First of all, it was very early on in my working with her. I think it was that same first 2-week Vegas sit down. Phyllis Diller had come to see my show. And she came to a late show because it was a night where she didn't have a late show. So she came to a late show and she saw me and came backstage and we started talking. And she goes, "Let me ask you something." She goes, "Why are you walking out of the center of the curtain?" And I said, "I don't know. That's what they told me I should." Because the band was behind the curtain and I was working in front of the curtain. I said, "I don't know. That's where they told me to come out." And she goes, "Don't come out from the center." She goes, "Come out from the side." I said, "Okay, why?" She says, "Because that's a big stage, the Caesar's Palace stage." She goes, "If you come in from the side, all that time it takes you to get to the center stage, people are chatting. Who is this guy? Have you ever seen him before? Does he look funny? All the things they do when there's somebody they don't know.
Right.
Oh." And she goes, "By the time you get to the center of the stage, half of that will be gone." And she was fucking right. And I was like, that's what only
amazing.
50 years in the business can tell you that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So that was great. And that was just a real learning lesson there. But then I was still struggling because people didn't even know there was an opening act. So what would happen is the lights would come down, and at Diana Ross shows at the time, probably still, but at the time, audiences would dress up like crazy. I mean, they all looked like dressed to the nines. And somebody else had told me, always dress, and this is like probably Vegas specific. I mean, it's certainly not true for, working clubs or anything. But they said, like, however your audience is dressed, dress one notch above. So the audience was always dressed to the nines. So I ended up having to wear a tux. So I wore a tux and just a notch above everybody, looking great. And so the lights would come down and the timpani would start. And this huge, like 30-piece orchestra would start. Bam, 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 bam. And the announcer would come on and go, ladies and gentlemen, Caesar's Palace is proud to present the Diana Ross Show. Please welcome your special guest, Paul Provenza. And you can hear 3,000 people go, oh, what the fuck? She'd get them all juiced up and ready for her entrance. And then I was just this huge letdown. And it was a real struggle to get them on my side. And like I said in the beginning, I was only doing 15, 20 minutes. And I was always dealing with it. And I would talk to the road manager, and he'd say, that's every comedian has that problem. It's no big deal. You're doing great, blah, blah, blah. I was like, man, I got to lick this somehow. I don't know what it was. And then this thing just popped into my head one day. And I went out the next night and tried it, and it just fucking killed. So I would come out after that, and I would say, by the time I'd get to the mic, I would say, I know what you're thinking. You get all dressed up. You got your drinks in front of you. You're all excited to see Diana Ross. The music starts up. The crescendo hits. And all of a sudden, I show up. And I get, it's just like an acknowledgement of what the entire audience is thinking at that point, right? So I got a nice little laugh. And I go, let me explain to you what's going on. When you go to a deli and you get a sandwich and they give you a pickle with the sandwich, you don't ask for a pickle. You may not want the pickle. Maybe you don't like pickles, but they just it just shows up. You go, I'm the pickle. And it would destroy. And it solved my problem. And from that point on, I had them from the first joke on. I had them in the palm of my hand. It was great. And that's why I was saying that Jerry came backstage and said, I'll give you $1 million for that joke right now.
I remember Jerry opening up for.
That had any sort of profile or getting any sort of action or anything. That was still a time when all these Vegas headliners would be playing and they would have opening acts. And that was like a great gig for a comedian.
When was that?
Up in old school, showbiz profile. And it was right. It was sort of on the cusp of that world fading away, but it was still a thing. George Wallace used to open for a lot of people. Me, Seinfeld, Howie Mandel used to open for. I mean, everybody from that era. One of the first big gigs you could get was opening for, Sammy Davis or, Tom Jones, that kind of. Those gigs don't really exist much anymore. But so Jerry was doing the same kind of thing. He was opening for probably, like Tony Orlando and Dawn or something like that. And his first response after seeing that was, I'll give you $1 million.
When was that, Paul? What year? Do you know about what year it is?
Yeah, we're probably talking about, because she had seen me on the Tonight Show. My first appearance.
85, I think, right?
Well, my first appearance was 83, so I would say this was probably 84.
I gotta tell you something.
Yeah,
this is something I'm a big Star Trek fan. Believe me, this is going somewhere. In 1994, and they came out with Star Trek Generations, which was the Next Generation movie. All right, you may or may not be following this, but what happened was they asked Brent Spiner, who played Data, what his role in the movie is. He goes, well, let me explain. Patrick Stewart is a sandwich. I'm the pickle. Never forgot that.
Wow.
And he probably got it from you.
He definitely got it.
I think you underplayed a little bit the Diana Ross thing, because when I saw you at Radio City, not only was it just that music, they did about 20 minutes of her greatest hits before that even went on.
But Radio City was a different gig. That wasn't a typical gig.
Oh.
She was doing a 2-week run at Radio City, and it was like the last time she had been performing in New York was that Central Park concert,
right?
That famous Central Park concert where it got rained out in the show, and there was a whole thing, and they did a whole thing with they had rain on the stage at one point, referencing it, and that was a different show. She even brought in the director, Joe Layton, Broadway musical director, and he directed her Radio City run. So that was different from a normal show.
Yeah, it was so long ago. It was so long ago. Wolfberg was backstage with us.
Wolfberg, wow.
And Joe Layton didn't want a stand-up comic on the show. He didn't want a comic because he wanted it to be something different. He wanted it to be not what she normally does. So he didn't want me on the show at all. And he brought in Jeff McBride,
right,
who is a magician, and John knows him real well. And he did these things with the
masks, and
he went to Asia or something and got caught up in this whole mask thing, and he did this mask thing with things coming out of his eye. It was fucking beautiful and really theatrical, right? But so he would open the show, and then Diana Ross insisted that I be on the show. So Jeff McBride would do his big thing, and then I would come out and do, and I had a very short set there. I think I was back down to like 15 minutes for that run. And I killed almost every night. That's a tough fucking gig, Radio City Music Hall, that context. But I did really great. But that was a weird thing, doing such a big, high profile gig that was getting a lot of attention because, like I said, it was the first time she had done the show since she had done that Central Park thing. And there was a whole controversy about where the money went. It was supposed to be a benefit. And it ended up, there's a Diana Ross playground actually in Central Park, which was from the results of that concert. But it was a big, high-profile gig. I mean, there was stuff in the paper about it every day. And I had to go and do this gig knowing full well that the director hated me. I overheard him fighting with Joe Layton about me being on the show. Oh, my God, it was horrible.
That really will build your confidence right there.
Really?
Right?
Yeah, when I used to open for Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I had the same thing. You know, it's like they're there to see a rock band, and you're the comedian magician. You know.
Yeah, but you were the coleslaw in that.
But what I did, that's what I said. I was the coleslaw. No, so what happened was, I remember I was in Philadelphia at the Tower Theater, and the local DJ just came out and went, "So you like Crosby, Stills, and Nash?" And they go crazy. He goes, "All right, here's your comedian." And it's like it was just
Kermit
death.
the voice.
It was
Kermit
just
the Frog
death.
voice.
Yeah, but
This
this guy had this. This guy had this attitude, like he gave a shit whether he was there or not. So what I did was, I thought it was like the greatest opening. They loved it. I had this vanishing boombox on the stage. And they'd introduce me, and I'd walk out on stage, and I would turn it on. It was a tape, and I would go down the channels, and I get to a Neil Young song. And people would go crazy, and I'd turn around, look over my shoulder, and shake my head no and go past it. Then I would get to a Crosby, Stills, and Nash song, and they would go nuts, and I'd go, no. And I'd turn it back. And I remember I used to use 2 Live Crew. She's got a big old butt.
Right.
And I'd play it like at 1,000,000 decibels. And I'd take off my suit jacket, and I'd cover the radio. And I'd walk up in the center of the stage, and I'd throw the radio up in the air, and it would vanish. And the music would just stop, and I'd go, "Don't you hate that music?" And they would go crazy. It was just like, and then you had them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you had your prop bullshit.
You had your little prop stuff going on there.
That little magic that you do.
Nice try,
but then
John.
after that,
try, John. Walk it off.
Hey, shut up. After that, Graham Nash came out and introduced me every night.
There you go.
And said, "Hey, he goes, we're not ready, quite ready yet. We're going to bring out a guy who's a friend of ours who we really respect. You got to give him the respect he deserves because he's a good friend of ours. And that's why we decided we'd make him a permanent part of our show. My good friend, John Ferrantino, and he'd hug me and the crowd would be like, I knows them.
That's a game changer.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, your intro can be such a fucking maker or breaker.
Yeah, but especially when the guy acknowledges that you're supposed to be there.
Yeah,
it's like
right. You're not just somebody.
Well, in a big situation like that, yes, you need some kind of legitimacy. In the clubs, I hated these big intros, like when they'd make you like, you're this big whatever, and it's like, now I got to live up to this shit. I feel like I can't just be myself,
Yeah.
It's so funny how they would turn nothing into something. Like I remember before I did like the Tonight Show and big TV shows, they would make a big deal out of having done Evening at the Improv.
Right. Well, that was the only TV show back then.
Everybody
Really?
had that credit at one point.
Yeah.
Even people who didn't have it, they would
those
say that
were-
from me.
That's when it meant something, though. Today, it's like there's so many. You might have seen that, whatever, 10,000 shows, 10,000 this, that. But when you guys were doing it, there were one or two. It was legit.
Right.
It meant.
How about when you're doing a show and the guy who's going on before you is doing these credits that he doesn't have?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I did.
Because a lot of comedians. I spent a lot of time over in England and on the international comedy circuit, which is populated mostly by like English and Australian comics. Just because it's easier for them to work internationally. It's harder for American to work internationally, visa shit and all that stuff. But I remember when I first started working over there, one of the first things that a comic friend of mine had told me was Americans come over here and the other comics generally hate them because the first thing they do is start listing their credits. And he goes, we don't do that here. We don't do that. Nobody cares what else you've done. Yeah. Are you going to be funny right now? And so these American comics would come over there, think it's the same as America, and they'd start throwing around these credits, and the audience right away would be turned off because they're like, don't tell us how good you are. Let us decide.
Yep. I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah, they're pretty brutal over there.
Because what happens is you get these guys now, and they got, some funny 3 minutes. So they go in the club, and they're funny for 3 minutes. And after that, it's like, if it ain't an audience full of their family and friends, the audience goes, what the fuck is this?
Speaking of time, I think we're about out of time, unfortunately.
Oh man.
You mean in life? Like in life?
Yeah.
that's
in life, I was your partner.
I think I got some more time. We're gonna go a little bit over, but it's worth it.
All right, so Paul, I'm gonna leave you with this thought. You know how Max and I had our little problems in the end. But this is my last memory of Max. And this will make you really laugh and make you we're working at the East Side Comedy Club, and this is what I think back of him. And he has the worst set imaginable. And we're in the dressing room, and he walks in. I told these guys the other story the other day. He's covered with sweat. His shirt is all open. He is a mess. He has sweat through his suit jacket, and he leans that back against the wall. And he goes, I go, Max, were they really that bad? He goes, bad? I did every joke I ever heard in my life and had to dance a bit. And you can just see him saying that.
It was so funny. We would arrange to meet for lunch, like him and a couple friends would arrange to meet for lunch, say on the Upper West Side in New York, something like that. And he would be like 5 minutes late because he stopped to get Kentucky Fried Chicken on the way to lunch.
How about,
you got to eat something beforehand so you don't look bad in front of your friends.
Exactly.
I just saw this. How about we were all at Westbury Music Fair, and we're in the dressing room, and Max goes to you, can I use the bathroom?
Oh, this is great.
And he comes walking out in just a pair of white BVTs. And he
goes,
it wasn't a towel.
It was a towel, but it wasn't
a towel.
A towel. It was like a hand towel that covered one ball.
He goes, you got any shampoo?
Hilarious. He just went in the bathroom and completely stripped down.
This is like right before he goes on stage.
He was funny.
That's funny shit.
Max Alexander.
Yeah. One of the funniest bits of all time, well, for me anyway. I love that thing about he's driving in the mall and he gets pulled over. The cop says, I got you doing 9 miles an hour. He goes, what are you kidding? My car starts shimmying at 6. Or what, I don't remember the exact speed. But yeah, I thought that was so funny.
I used to come walking out and you go, well, I'm stuffed. I can only eat like pages 3 through 7 on the menu.
I remember once ordering something backstage. He was backstage hanging out, and I ordered something backstage, and the food comes, and Max pulls salt and pepper out of his own pocket.
Oh man. All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for doing this. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, it was really cool to meet you, man. It was great hanging out with you.
I hope you had fun, man.
I'm going to tell my cousin Mike about you, Mike.
Craig.
Yeah, he's
I'll email you.
Cool.
Yeah.
John, we got to hang out one of these days. Do you ever get to LA?
Yeah, I work in the Magic Castle quite a bit.
Well, you got to let me know when you're coming out. Give me a couple
I will.
days.
We'll do lunch.
Oh, one more question,
will.
Paul. This is totally off the boards. We'll see what happens. When you're walking around Los Angeles, does anybody come up to you and say, "Wow, you were great in Starsky and Hutch"? Does anybody do that to you?
You know what? Yes. And for many years, I
Yep.
got a lot of free drinks because of that.
Yep.
And it was really funny because he's like 25 years older than
Yeah,
me.
he's way older. But
So
you
when
look great, man.
when I looked like he looked on the TV show, which was like 20 years after he did the TV show, people would still think I was. Yeah, I once drank for free at the W all night because the bartender thought I was Paul Michael
Nice.
Here you go. I
And,
figured
and the
that.
more you tell them no, the more they believe you are.
Hilarious. Hilarious. I was like, I'm
Cool.
telling the truth. He keeps sending me free drinks. I don't know what
Yeah.
All righty.
And
Well,
so-
let's give what, Mike?
I was going to say somewhere Glazer was going. No, it's really me. It's
Yeah.
really me. Give me a drink.
He also years ago used to get recognized on the street as the Pickle when we were walking in
The
New York.
Pickle.
once.
in
The
New
deal.
on
The deal. What's the deal with that?
All right. Let's have a round of applause for Paul Provenza,
Hang
Hang
good
on, check
friend.
out Obsessive Comedy Disorder, the podcast, Obsessive Comedy Disorder.
Obsessive.
There's some you'll really like a lot of them, John. There's some really good ones on there.
All right. Well, give Craig the information. We can run a banner, right?
It's wherever you look at podcasts. It's everywhere.
Obsessive comedy disorder.
Obsessive comedy disorder. Cool.
All righty.
Check it out.
All right.
Sounds good. All right. Let's have a round of applause for Paul Provenza.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for
Paul.
coming in.
Thank
It's
you.
great
Paul.
seeing you.
Crowd. Thank you.
Oh,
Let's have a round of applause for Mike Grief
Hey.
and Craig Mitchell. And I'm John Ferrantino. And again, you can catch us on our website on www.thebbbbradio.com. And we're on Strong Island TV. We're on a Roku channel. We're on Twitch.
Spotify.
We're on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. We're everywhere.
We're in
Yes.
your sister's
Heroin.
backyard.
Heroin, fentanyl. We're on them all.
Yeah, we're on them all, baby.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. And we will see you next week with Joey Cola.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.